Non-binary people rock out. I don't know if they're causing any problems. They're just probably hanging and,
so you think that's real?
It's not nonsense.
Non-binary is nonsense. You're saying that just not...
Who cares? Let people live.
Whether individual people like you or others don't see it as an issue, it is the main reason why they lost in 2024. This is extremely radical. When you have like abortion clinics outside the DNC, abortion on demand, all these things left people feeling the Democrat Party is radical.
There are some people who push back against these, things in our culture that they view as different. But honestly, I just don't think it matters that much.
It doesn't mean that you're correct because I don't have the names of children on top of my head. At the end of the day, what I'm explaining to you...
Can Democrats ever get past their reputation as culturally extreme? That's the question I'll be hashing out with MAGA YouTube star Blaire White and progressive political commentator Jack Cochiarella in this episode of Brad versus the World, my series where I take on the most contentious political debates and topics with influential online voices from across the ideological spectrum. First, here's the context. Axios reports that top Democratic presidential prospects like California Governor Gavin Newsom, Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro, and former Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg have all taken quiet steps to distance themselves from 2020-era ideas about DEI, COVID mandates, and gender identity. Yet at the same time, the official Democratic Party apparatus and some of its most prominent leaders are still clinging to some of the party's most toxic and absurd ideas. The official X account for the Democrats just last week posted honoring the supposed resilience of, quote, non-binary Americans. So I guess we're still pretending that biological reality is optional if you have a septum piercing. And for all his newfound rhetoric about appearing culturally normal, Gavin Newsom is still insisting that the anti-woke backlash is just anti-blackness. Yes, seriously. And he's standing behind the self-ID gender policies that allowed anybody who declares themselves a woman or non-binary to walk into any sensitive women's space in California just based on their own self-identification. And he's even standing by his policies that allowed biologically male sex offenders to be placed in women's prisons. Meanwhile, Democrats are arguing among themselves about how much to embrace the controversial leftist streamer Hasan Piker, who has infamously said that America deserved 9/11, called for a Republican senator to be killed, said he wants to see the streets run red with landlords' blood, and said so many other unhinged things that it's hard to even surmise them. And yet, it's an open debate in the Democratic Party whether he is part of their coalition and should be embraced or shunned. Now, simply talking to or doing interviews with anybody with a significant platform, that's one thing. But Democratic Senate candidates in Michigan have actually campaigned with Hasan Piker, and leaders in the party, like Zohran Mamdani, the new mayor of New York City, have embraced him as well. None of this is going to help them come off as culturally normal. That's just my take, though, and the debate is only just beginning. Blaire and Jack, join me now, and let's get into it. Blaire, Jack, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having
me.
So let's talk about the Democrats, and particularly Gavin Newsom and some of these other folks. Are they ever going to be able to convince America that, 2020 didn't happen? They never went full kind of off the deep end on some of the gender and race and other stuff and COVID, and they're actually normal just like us. Blaire, I'll start with you. Are you buying any of this rebrand attempt, or are they even really trying it at all?
I think that it would be politically, strategic and a positive thing for them to at least give off the, impression that they're becoming a more moderate party. I think if they're smart, that's what they'll do. And we've seen Gavin Newsom sort of try. I can't necessarily say that I've seen the entirety of the party go in that direction. I think that if anything, especially, the ICE situation triggered a lot of people to kind of go back into, a hyper woke state, for lack of better words. A lot of the laws that were put in place during peak woke are still there. So California is still a sanctuary state for transgender children. There's a lot of things that even if people's attitudes are maybe not as woke as before, the damage has been done in terms of legalities and laws that are still in place. So I think that all of that obviously needs to be overturned. But I think that they're going to pretend and not really feel that way. And then it's going to go back to enacting laws that go along with that ideology.
Yeah.
If they get back in office, and for midterms, they probably will do pretty well.
Jack, I'll come to you here. I mean, Blaire mentioned it, and I mentioned it in my monologue as well. In California, under Gavin Newsom, they put biological males in women's prisons by the dozens under gender ID, self ID, right, including male offenders and violent people. They literally made it so that under public accommodations law, if you just say you're non-binary, you can go into any women's space in California that's subject to those laws, including nude spas. I mean, and you still have the Democrats like tweeting about imaginary things like non-binary. How are they still doing this? And are they really ever going to beat the like weird woke allegations if they're still doubling down on this stuff?
I don't know. I think it's tough to say that that's like the Democrats. I think a lot of stuff gets lumped in. I think the right-wing media does a great job of this, of like finding the one person on TikTok who says, and I know we're going to talk about and dispute laws and policies and things that Democrats have tweeted, but like I think we can all agree that the right does a pretty good job of finding, like libs of TikTok is like this, just some person with no association to the Democratic Party that they don't like, and they brand it as like, this is, Joe Biden on a crusade to Kamala Harris through the Hillary Clinton, and that happens a lot.
It's also still it's just being tweeted by the Democrats' X account about non-binary rights, and we're talking about Gavin Newsom. That's not libs of TikTok cherry picking.
No, and non-binary people rock out. I don't know if they're causing any problems. They're just probably hanging, and
so you think that's real?
Do I think it's real?
Yeah, do you think people are non-binary?
I don't care. Do you?
Yeah, kind of. I think it's ridiculous.
Why? What's ridiculous about it?
Well, because every human is either biologically male or female with very rare intersex conditions. I think
but there are intersex people.
Yeah, but that's not who we're talking about when we talk about non-binary people. Almost none of them are intersex. They just get a nose ring and think that makes them not male if they cut their hair. How has that
affected the material
because it makes
of your life
it makes
so
the
far?
LGBT community look like a joke, and support for things like gay marriage go down. To the public.
Do you think
To the general
non-binary people make support for gay marriage
Yes, I do.
go down?
Yeah, completely.
So your chief concern is
Literally.
like support for gay marriage going down?
Yeah, I mean, that's one of my big concerns.
Shouldn't you be
as a
more
gay
critical
person.
of the Republican Party then?
I'm very critical of them, but I
I
think
know, but like, do you think that that's the great issue of our time? Like, if your chief concern is, okay, this is things that make support for gay marriage go down, shouldn't we
But
like
he
kind
didn't
of talk
say it's
about
the
like the
chief
rise
issue
in
of all
I didn't say it's
time.
the
No,
only
I'm not.
thing, but I think
I'm
it's
saying that, like,
lumping
if
in
that's a
of
concern, then I
nonsense
just
and
think
extremism with the LGBT community and with gay
it's
rights.
not nonsense. Like,
Non-binary is nonsense. You're saying that just not.
Who cares? Let people live.
I mean, I'm not saying it
Well,
should be illegal.
what
That
you're-
seems really normal to me. Like, that's what
Non-binary
I'm saying.
seems normal.
No, letting people live seems very normal. Just do whatever you're not hurting people.
Legally,
Great.
sure.
Rock out.
But like when you're actually lumping that in with me culturally and my rights and my acceptance, I do get to
who's
object
lumping
to that.
in?
Literally all the
general
alphabet groups and
population.
activists. Hey guys, if you're enjoying the debate, do subscribe to this channel for more political panels with big online voices. Hit the like button and comment with your thoughts so far about how it's going. And also let me know who else you want to see on the debate panel. Comment below, subscribe, all of that. And let's get back in to the debate. I've made non-binary part of LGBT.
And how has that affected you? Did you have to like be in an elevator with someone?
Well,
Like,
I do, and some of that BO is out of control. No, I'm kidding. But because essentially, I mean,
Did you see like the girl doing like like they them energy clip and
Well,
like at
that's
the
me.
concert and
That's
like
a
that is
joke.
that an imposition on your freedom? You're killing it professionally. You're doing well. Like people like you. You get to follow. You're kind of like I've seen the numbers. They're good. It seems like you're doing fine.
Sure, but
I think
they've made the community into a joke.
I think the live and let live
Why?
thing, I think it's easy to say that, like, who cares about any of this stuff, live and let live. But, like, ultimately, the Democrat Party does have to face the fact that whether individual people like you or others don't see it as an issue, it is the main reason why they lost in 2024. So it is something that even if it's,
reason.
I think it's.
I think campaigning with Liz Cheney was was one of the main reasons.
I don't know.
And
Do most people
refusal
even
to
know who
focus
that
on it.
is?
That goes back to warmongers owning both parties, and why I also think we'd be at war with Iran with Kamala. But
let's
at
not
the end of the
relitigate
day,
that.
even if we can't agree that it's the number one issue, and maybe it's not the number one, but it is most certainly top 2 or 3.
So I'd
was
say
the
this.
cultural backlash.
I go on a lot of podcasts, and I'm like not a lot. I'm not as busy as maybe some other folks are. Y'all probably do a little bit more outside of just your channel's media than me. It's the first time I've ever been asked about non-binary people. Like when I go on the Bulwark, when I'm hanging out with Tommy and the Pod Save guys, or I'm doing stuff with Don Lemon. Never have I been asked about this. It seems like a fixation of right-wing media, right-wing culture. It's not our top issue. Just because you see a post from the Democrats because it falls on the calendar, lots of stuff falls on the calendar. Zohran Mamdani was tweeting, praise Jesus, because Easter falls on the calendar.
Right, and he
Like,
also
I don't
wants
think he's
taxpayers to
converted.
fund gender transitions for minors in New York City as a sanctuary state, so a sanctuary district, rather.
So I think things are just falling on the calendar, and people are posting about things
What?
because that's what you do. So do brands, and it's not our top issue. And I think to try to frame that is because the Republican Party's got nothing else to talk
Well,
about.
but it's not
You got
just this one
pedophiles running your
Okay, but-
government. You're at war, spending $200 billion already, and I too would be shifting to cultural issues if my economic
So
status.
you don't think
was
the
as
cultural
bad as Donald
reputation
Trump's
hurts
is right now.
Democrats at all?
I think that not focusing on economic issues does. Yeah,
So
but I
you
don't think that's what's happening.
so what I mean,
It
honestly, Sure, Blaire, go off.
absolutely has so much to do with the cultural backlash. It has so much to do with the values that maybe it has not been. And I agree that there's a lot of like maybe mainstream Democrats who their top issue isn't gender stuff, isn't race stuff,
Yeah.
isn't woke stuff. But the problem is
Woke
those
stuff.
people kind of go, they allow the radicals of the party to be on
Who's
autopilot.
they?
I'm referring to people maybe such as yourself, like more of a mainstream, like it's not your top issue to care about gender issues or culture wars.
And
But
who
then
are
the
the
problem is
radicals?
the people, you don't think there's radicals in the
Who are
Democrat
they?
Party?
So
You don't-
like
you don't-
if I said I think that the Republican Party is being taken
the
over by white
the radicals
supremacists
in
and
the
Nazis.
Democrat
One sec.
Party, I would say, are the
so if I was
contingent of
making a
people.
claim,
You asked me a question. You
I
asked me a
did. You're right.
question. The radicals in the Democrat Party, you could wrangle them into a few different groups. I would say the people who had orgasms over Luigi Mangione murdering someone, the people
Smoke show, that guy.
the people who celebrated Charlie Kirk being murdered on camera, the people who do
I'm
support
still carrying the flame.
the people who do support children transitioning. Those are all radical positions and worldviews in my mind. And
Lowers the suicide rate.
I'm trying to be fair, and I'm not going to say that that
Protecting
is the
kids.
entirety of the Democratic Party because I actually don't believe it is. However, those people, and this is all stuff that, like, obviously leaders like Gavin Newsom are aware of this, and that's why he's changing tone. If the gender stuff and all the more radical stuff was doing well for the Democrat Party, they would not. They would still be running with it with no issue. Maybe it's not your top issue. Maybe you're more focused on geopolitics. Maybe you're more focused on other things. But those people, because you guys are on autopilot, not thinking about as much, they're enacting laws like you can give a 13-year-old a double mastectomy. And then the general public is looking at that and saying, this is extremely radical. When you have like abortion clinics outside the DNC, abortion on demand, all these things left people feeling
Sick.
the Democrat Party is radical. And this is a widely held perception of the Democrat Party. Like, this was the main like battle going on in 2024 and still is. Like, it is something you guys have to contend with, even if it's not something that you personally care a lot about. In terms of winning elections going forward on the domestic side,
I mean, it haunted
You guys
Kamala
have to contend
Harris,
with
right?
it.
Her
So I
ACLU,
will say that-
her
so
ACLU
Donald
survey,
Trump-
where she said
Yeah,
like
and
illegal
that's-
immigrants should get taxpayer-funded trans
So
surgeries and all of this.
That's the reason why, some organizations have come out to, don't take, pledges, don't put yourself down and answer issue, whatever the things. But, Donald Trump did spend $100 million on the, Kamala's for they, them ad.
And it worked.
He spent, so I would like to say this. So you can say that it worked, but looking at the data, it was not a top 5 performing message for Trump, right? Talking about no new war, saying that I'm going to end inflation on day one. Like those issues, economic issues, Donald Trump, of course, lied about. I believe we still have inflation. I think we're at war right now, one of many that Donald Trump has started. Those were better performing issues. So when people like to say that this is like holding us down, I don't buy that. Y'all spent a lot of money talking about it, but it's just not something that Democrats engage with. But if I were to make a claim like you did, saying that the Democratic Party, the Democrats, the radicals, they're all lumped in, which you
I
gave
didn't
like
say
no.
that. I said the opposite. I said they're not the entirety of the party, obviously, but they do exist. And
Yeah,
it's
but
a lot of people.
I need a they. I need a person. I need an
Well,
example.
I think the
I need some-
activist groups that they're like the
Give me one.
the ACLU, the Human Rights Campaign are very
GLAAD,
extreme, and the
Black Lives
Democratic Party
Matter.
embraces them and does their bidding.
What do you mean does their bidding? Give some more concrete
Enacts
examples of
their
that.
policies. So, for example, the ACLU has fought for a lot of the trans policies that California and other blue states have just enacted, almost carte blanche.
And you think that, it's not maybe just because the constituents of those places support that?
It might be, but you asked if they're powerful and
But it's also
influential, and they
because
are.
it's also because they donate to politicians, and this is one of the ways you buy votes and you buy favor and you buy opinions as well. I don't know. I just
I
like
just
I don't
don't
see
think
the
it's central. I think that's our conflict here is like if we just came on and started like shooting the three of us, it would never be something that I'd say or mention or bring up. But it seems like something that the right is so desperate to bring up. And I understand that there are some people who push back against these, things in our culture that they view as different. But honestly, I just don't think it matters that much. And I think the right has done a good job trying to make that a topic of conversation, especially when why in the hell would they want to talk about anything else right now?
I think
We're at
that's
war.
fair.
The price
That
of
a lot
everything
of
is
people
spiking.
who
Yeah,
focus
that I
on the
think
culture
Democrats
stuff are trying to avoid talking about some of the failures of the Trump
you said that
administration.
the
However, Jack,
Democrats,
well,
and
hang on,
I
hang on,
follow
hang on.
that account. Yeah, go
Yeah,
ahead.
so you say like it. Well, I would never bring it up. I'm telling you now, it's going to be brought up in 2028 if Gavin Newsom is the nominee that he transferred biological male offenders into women's prisons, that he had harsh COVID lockdowns and then went out to the French Laundry, right? That they did a lot of this excessive DEI stuff. It's going to be brought up, and that stuff makes the people, just average everyday Americans who hear about it, think Democrats are crazy. So my point is that it
But,
distracts from the economic message and from the anti-Trump message that could be compelling to a lot of
so
people.
And
my question
also
is,
a lot of that stuff is stuff that the average person feels like they have more control over. They can go to their local school board and say, "Why are there LGBT books in my fifth grader's
what's an
school?"
LGBT book?
There are a lot of books that have been in schools throughout.
I need to get one off. I need you to give me one, Brad.
You want me to find the names of them?
No, I just want one book.
This
You
book
feel
is
strongly.
gay. All
I-
boys are
I
no,
blue.
no.
This,
Blaire?
gender queer. This book is gay. Jazz Jennings book series.
We're
Stella
reading
brings the
now.
family. All of
I
these.
love when we're doing notes.
You just asked for names of books, and I just gave them to you.
I
At
wanted
the
them
end
to
of
be
the
on your
day,
heart, though.
at the end of the
When I
day,
talk, okay, sure.
like it doesn't mean that you're correct because I don't have the names
No,
of
it does.
children's
It
books
just
on top
means
of
you
my
don't
head.
give.
At the end of the day,
It just
what I'm
means you don't
explaining to
actually
you
care.
is a major blind spot that Democrats, perhaps such as yourself, have had over the past few years about the issues with being seen as culturally abnormal or, you know, just bad, or bad for kids, bad for women, bad for social cohesion. At
Bad
the
for
end of the day, when
kids.
a
We got a
parent sees
pedophile
that there's
president.
when there's parents that see kids like this in their books like this in their school, they feel like they have a lot more control over that than the war in Iran, than the economy, than these larger issues that we can all agree are a bigger deal. However, you have a school board you can go to. You have local
But
politicians you can fight
actually,
for and you can vote
so
for.
here's an
You have
interesting
local
thing.
ordinances, local laws. So these are the things that, whether you guys like it or not, people do latch onto. People latch onto the fact that California is a sanctuary state for trans children and is giving double mastectomies to children as young as 13, despite the fact that you can't be 18 until you go into a tanning bed. This might not matter a lot to you, and that's fine. But a lot more matters than just what matters to you. Like, a lot of people care. A lot of people are really horrified by the cultural norms that the left has tried to instill in America that have been so antithetical towards the American way of life for so long. And you guys did overplay your hand with the culture stuff. I mean, it's just a fact. Any honest review of what happened in 2024, even if it's not the number one thing in their perception, they're going to agree and say, the cultural stuff was a big deal. It's the reason why, even as we're sitting here talking, the only real ad we kind of can remember from 2024 super clearly is the they them Kamala ad that Trump ran. There's a reason why that one sticks out so much more in people's memories, and why the economy stuff maybe doesn't.
Okay. But there's a lot of Kamala Harris economic policies I could talk about. There's a lot of Donald Trump economic policies that I could talk about that didn't work out. I think the most, the stickiest thing from Donald Trump's campaign was when JD Vance kept saying no new wars, and then JD Vance is not doing no new wars, so that's interesting. Richard, and I'm going to pronounce his name wrong. It's like Ilhein. It's like UL. Brad, if you're better at pronunciation, it's like ULHEIN. I don't know how to say it. He's an Illinois-based billionaire. You brought up the fact that school board races are things that parents think that they have more control over. This Illinois
Well, they
uh,
do. They have
this
more
Illinois
control over that than the
so this
war.
Illinois billionaire, right? Graham Plattner talked about him. That's why I know about this. Love Graham Plattner. Talked about this Illinois billionaire, Big Richie, right? Who's sending millions of dollars to Maine to fund school board battles over what issue? Trans people. He wants to organize and get elected school board members who will talk nonstop about trans issues because he knows if that's what happens, and maybe this is giving credibility to your argument,
Yeah, because
then
it
the main
resonates with
Senate
people.
race, then the main Senate race might be defined by a topic of conversation that really practically means nothing in people's lives. So what I'm saying is that this is not something that Democrats are desperate to talk about, but in fact, the billionaires who want us talking about anything but economic issues, the military-industrial complex, Israel's control over our government. They would rather us discuss these culture wars, not Democrats, not Gavin Newsom. He's
So
not itching
we have
for
to
it.
move on to one
I'm
final
saying
thing, but
that it is the
I take
billionaire
your
class
point, but they
and the
can't make
media
it
that
resonate
wants
with
us
people if
discussing
it
this.
didn't already resonate with people. I want to, so
And I'm sorry, just one, it does prove my point. These topics would not be being funded to be, the central battlegrounds if they didn't resonate with people, which is the point. If you
But
guys
your
can't,
point was that
if the Democrat
Democrats want
Party
to
can't
talk
be
about
smart
them.
enough, if the Democrat Party can't be smart enough to reject that war and sort of return to a more normal middle ground on these issues, which Americans want, then they're not going to be seen as palatable as they could be, even with the war going on. Because again, the war is a big deal. Israel's a big deal. The Epstein stuff's a big deal. These also at a certain point become these like existential issues that the average person feels they have no control over. But they do, and rightfully so, feel like they have a little more control over content their kids are being exposed to, race issues, gender issues. Those are the things that are in the domain that average people think they have a fighting chance of
So, guys,
changing.
I've got to put a pin on that because I do want us to talk about Hasan Piker, who is, of course, the left-wing streamer, internet star, very polemic, controversial figure. Democrats are fighting amongst themselves over the extent to which they should be elected. Democrats and kind of party apparatus people are fighting over the extent to which they should associate with Hasan Piker. And I'm going to play a little Hasan compilation of some of my favorite moments of him. But I'll just say that I don't really have an issue with people like going on his stream or talking to him. I think politicians should talk to people with large platforms and try to reach their audiences without much in the way of purity tests. And I don't super believe in the guilt by association. There's probably some limit. However, I mean, candidates are inviting him for friendly collabs. They're bringing him on stage to campaign with them. And that's where this debate comes in. I'm going to play a compilation of Hasan moments, and then we will discuss whether he should be considered within bounds for the Democratic Party. Let's listen.
Isn't that how he lost his fucking dumb ass eye? Because he got his fucking eye hole fucked? America deserved 9/11, dude. I'm saying.
Poor people that they can afford housing in Berkeley. I don't know how that works.
My understanding is that the property owners who have properties there choose just not to rent it at all.
Yeah, kill them. Kill those and murder those in the street. Let the streets soak in their red capitalist bloods, dude.
If you cared about Medicare fraud or Medicaid fraud, you would kill Rick Scott, okay? You wouldn't make Rick Scott, former governor of Florida, Rick Scott, you wouldn't make him the current, what is his current office? What is he?
So I'm going to come to you on this, Jack, because I do see you laughing. My favorite part about the Hasan clip where he's casually suggesting U.S. senators should be killed is that he actually doesn't know what office Rick Scott currently holds, but he also still feels so confident he should be murdered. Listen, to me, as an independent, Hasan is a radical, extreme figure, a toxic figure. I can't understand why a party would want to closely affiliate with him, but I think you disagree. Make your case.
Can I just say a thing first about my laughing?
Yeah.
For all the people who are always laughing at that, I have never heard anything more about Donald Trump than you cannot like him, but you gotta admit he's funny, right? And I hear the same thing about Nick Fuentes. I'm allowed to laugh. Hasan Piker is funny. You can dislike Hasan Piker. I dislike Nick Fuentes. A lot of the clips make me laugh. A lot of the clips of Trump make me laugh. That's what makes them so dangerous. I think that we can kind of agree on that. Hasan is a guy with a big audience that is engaged in organizing in a way that would be incredibly beneficial for a Democratic Party that often lacks outreach to certain, more left-wing communities. I think Hasan has got great influence. Hasan has, in my opinion, a set worldview, which honestly, and being an honest broker in political conversations, I think is the most important thing. Like, if you have a worldview, I can disagree with you, but probably like I hate to throw around the term respect because everyone always loves to respect each other, which I don't think is really necessary all the time. But he's got a set worldview. He's got a big audience. He's leading, I would say, people on the left right now in talking about this illegitimate, illegal, immoral war. That by the time that this comes out, might have escalated to nuclear conflict, according to Tucker Carlson. And I think that he provides an interesting voice, a different audience. And yeah, I would probably have said some if I streamed, 16 hours a day. I've got the power of editing. But I think that talking about Hasan Piker, the most vocal and maybe best spoken, I think Graham Plattner's up there amongst some others, opponent to this war at a time in which people are furious with it. Like Blaire, we agreed that you're upset about the war. It's just a huge miscalculation for the Democratic Party, the Democratic establishment. But oh no, when is the Democratic establishment ever miscalculated?
Well, they are talking about it, and they are having this conversation. And I would actually suggest that it's the perfect time to make sure you are gatekeeping your movement and presenting a palatable and sane alternative to the chaos of the Trump administration.
Really?
I would.
Can I make a counterpoint
Please.
to that? Sorry to interrupt, but didn't you just say that Democrats are too distracted with fucking cultural issues that people
but you don't
really
have to
care
bring
about?
the guy who said America deserved 9/11 on the
But why are
campaign
we
trail
having
with
this
you.
conversation?
What?
Why are we having this conversation right now?
Because
Don't you think we're having the conversation because the neocons in the party and the Israel backing, the Israel First Democrats and the Democratic establishment want to make sure that everyone is okay with Netanyahu and okay with genocide?
Well,
and
no,
they're going to
there's
beat
been a
down anyone who will
we've been
conversation
speak
talking about
out.
Hassan for years.
Yeah, there's been a conversation about if he should be associated with by more mainstream Democrats for a long time before the war.
Certainly,
Before
but it's
so-
peaked right now.
But it
We could
doesn't
say,
even make
if we go
sense,
to
Jack,
Google
because
search,
he's
or-
also anti-Democrat. He says he'll vote third party over Kamala, over Gavin Newsom. So how is he an asset to Democrats?
He's a guy because and it's funny. And Blaire, sorry for interrupting because we're going to go to you at some point. I'm sorry. But I got mocked for this, which I thought was the dumbest. I've sent a lot of stupid tweets. You can mock me for whatever. But I said, Hasan is not a podcaster. He's a cultural fixture. Now, I'm not saying he's an A-lister and he's going to the Met Gala, but he was invited to the Vanity Fair Oscars party. Not to say that that is the gauge of celebrity and impact and status, but Hasan exists above politics in the same way that someone like Tucker Carlson does, or Nick Fuentes does, or these other people. You wouldn't say, and of course he's the president, but Donald Trump is much more of a cultural figure than he is a political figure, right? I would think that we'd probably say the opposite for Joe Biden. It was one of the struggles of his presidency that he just didn't break through to normal people. They forgot that he even existed. And when they saw him, they thought he was old, and that was a problem. But Hasan is a cultural fixture. His clips break through. His audience is bigger than just the people who watch him stream. Those clips travel far.
Yeah,
they have
that's
great
true,
impact.
absolutely.
He was able to raise, $50,000 for Oliver Larkin, 60, who's running against Jared Moskowitz. It's been a huge boost to his campaign, so much attention. And in this economy, attention is everything. Hasan exists above a lot more than just coming on a show and getting some views, right? And I think that that is the thing that a lot of people miss. That is what Donald Trump was able to do so successfully. Talk about cultural figures. Theo Vaughn is one. Joe Rogan is not just the audience of, 30 million people who tuned into those podcasts. Those things travel so much farther. And if you want to organize in the digital age, you have to go places where things travel far. You don't got to agree with everything he says, but at least you can make a much bigger impact than a 2 p.m. MSNBC
Let's
hit.
bring in Blaire with your thoughts.
think that I don't think the Democrats have many other alternative or other people they can choose from if they're trying to find sort of their version of the podcast sort of figure, a Joe Rogan, a Theo Vaughn. Because,
what's up? No, I'm joking.
No offense. It's just that
I laughed
when
at
it
that.
comes
Wow.
to-
Okay, I beat out Tucker Carlson on the YouTube podcast ratings most
I'm not
week.
dissing your
Everyone,
numbers.
ouch.
I'm not.
But if we're talking about, it was so integral to the right winning in 2024, the fact that we had a Joe Rogan, Trump went on there, that was a huge part. The podcast ether was huge. And the left has had a really hard time keeping up with that. And Hasan is one of the only people that can get somewhat of an amount of attention. But that's the point, is that they don't have any other real option. So I don't think it plays into any sort of agenda of coming across as more moderate to be having someone who said that we deserve 9/11, et cetera. However, I don't know. I think things are pretty radical on every end right now. How can you really say Hasan is off limits when a huge contingent of the party said yeah, Charlie Kirk got murdered, or yeah, we like that Luigi Mangione is murdering CEOs. Like that is something that is
Or people go
not
on
the
with Bill
entirety
Maher.
of the left, but is so prevalent that it's kind of hard to be like, but this person is off limits.
Well, I would
Do I
draw
think
a
he'll ever have the
distinction.
same impact as a Joe Rogan, a Theo Vaughn, any of those people? I don't think in a million years, to be honest, but
Hasan?
they don't really have anyone else.
I would draw a distinction between like going on his stream and talking to him is one thing, but I think when you are campaigning with Hasan Piker, then you are taking on his more radical statements. And I can tell you in Michigan, right, where I'm living not there currently, but it's where I'm going to spend my life. It's where my partner's family's from. Like the
Hey, shout
moderate
out.
Michigan voter who could be convinced to vote for Democrats, if they see an ad with Hasan's highlight reel tying to Democrats, they're going to think these people are crazy. And I just think
And
that's what you want to avoid if you're trying to win, Jack.
And to that I say, anyone who is running the Hasan Piker ad is losing badly. They are. They are. They just are. Like, that is just the case. I think that, Donald Trump had dinner with Nick Fuentes, who, again, I know everyone's got different political perspective. I think we can say that Nick Fuentes is a little bit more extreme than Hasan, right? Like, I think we can agree with that. Maybe the Holocaust denier
I
is
think
worse than the guy
they're not
who's
too
like,
dissimilar, but
I will say, I don't think I've ever come across a clip, and I've seen a lot of montages of like the most outrageous things Nick Fuentes has said, and he absolutely has. I don't think I've ever seen him directly say a sitting, politician should be murdered or called to violence as many times as like a Hasan. He said disgusting
I wouldn't be
things.
shocked if Nick had said something like that.
I wouldn't be shocked, but I can't say that I've seen that.
But he didn't say you should. He said if you care about Medicare fraud, you should
come on.
kill. He
Come
didn't say
on.
We
go
all know
kill
what that
him.
means, Jack.
Stop.
No, we don't know what that means. That's ridiculous.
Yes,
Donald
we
Trump
do.
wanted
Yes, we
Democrats.
do.
Donald Trump was retweeting hang Democrats in
And
the
I
street.
think that's
and he's
awful.
the
I think
president
that's
of the United
disgusting.
States.
And I do think that's worse than Hasan, but it doesn't make what Hasan did okay.
No, but I'm saying Donald Trump had dinner with Nick Fuentes, and
Yeah,
the
it's
only
wrong.
mention that I ever saw was Chuck Schumer bring it up at the DNC. Chuck Schumer, like, okay. And that was it. Didn't do anything with it. So I honestly, if you think that, like, I'm not shot at you, but like, if you think that Hasan is going to be like the content of an ad in some Michigan Senate like race, this is not going to happen. It's just not.
I
And if
disagree,
it is,
but
they're desperate and they're losing.
well, I guess we'll put a pin on it on that one. Thank you guys so much for coming on and for the fiery and spirited conversation. And guys, if
And
you
respectful.
yes, respectful. We will check if you want to check out both of their channels. Definitely do. They both are very influential voices. Thank you guys for being here. I really do appreciate your time.
Appreciate
Thank
Brad.
you.
All right, guys, we're going to leave it there. Thank you so much for tuning in. Do subscribe if you haven't yet. Do hit the like button, comment with your thoughts. Let me know who else you want to see on the show and all of that. And we'll be back with more real soon.